Had such an interesting conversation with Dr. Sabrina Ali Mohammed so far, and she is one of the American Fellows, and it was a publication grant she has. She's a professor at Cal State University Long Beach. She has her PhD in sociology from UC Riverside. The focus of all of her work, and she has many publications and has had a number of awards, the focus of her work has been issues that are at the heart of AUW: race relations, racial tensions, class, gender, sexuality, and transnational feminism. Please welcome Dr. Sabrina.
So thank you so much for, first of all, the award, and such a deep honor to be part of the AUW family. Every person who heard about my award after getting it said, "Oh, those are so hard to get, and they're amazing women." So I was really honored to have gotten the notification letter to work on my latest publication that looks at hate crimes towards Muslim women. So in general, my work has been focused on the war on terror and its impact, in particular on US Muslims. So I'm happy to say that I turned in my tenure file last week. And the generous award that I received from AUW allowed me to submit my research for publication, and it's been accepted, actually. So forthcoming in spring, so I'm very happy about that as well. I teach classes on racial and gender inequality in sociology, as well as women's studies. And I have to say that the best part of my work at the university at Long Beach is really the young women that are so incredible. They give me so much passion and desire to keep doing what I'm doing. And so I think this multi-generation commitment to women is so important, and we live it every day. You know, and so I definitely take this kind of award as not just a material which is very, believe me, really helpful, as well as I have 2 young children, but also it is a vote of confidence in who we are as women to pursue research and to be minds, you know, and I pass it along with my students, and when I'm even having a hard time or a difficult time, I draw on that as confidence for myself as well. And the last thing I wanted to say is that my mom was and has always been such a deep inspiration for me. She's always really stood up for women and women's issues and women's communities, and been an amazing advocate. And she passed away when I was doing my PhD, so I unfortunately have never been able to have her with me along this, but I know that if she was here, she would just think this is such an amazing, as she would probably say, kick-ass group of women. So I just wanted to just remind myself of her in these moments of incredible honor in this luncheon with all of you, and a few hours away from my toddlers, which I'll take. Thank you so much.
Her focus is anthropology, and her specific area of study is on land use. And you might wonder a little bit, you know, what is she doing? And I'm going to give her a chance to tell us. But land use is a really interesting topic, and it really is a public policy issue, typically, when we stop and really think about it. I'm at the Port of Long Beach, and we have a land use study group. So I know how important it is to the port. So Lizzie, take it away.
Thank you, Margaret. And thank you to everyone here. The American Fellowship has really been a tremendous opportunity for me. I'm in my last year of PhD studies at UC Santa Cruz, and one of the things that this award has allowed me to do is to live here in Los Angeles, which is where my partner lives. We spent the last 2 or 3 years prior to this having to commute back and forth to see each other because he was stuck here with his job. So the fellowship has allowed me to actually live in my house with my partner, which has been wonderful. It's also given me a reprieve from teaching for the year, which has allowed me to get some more publications out and underway, and also to finish my dissertation and start looking for long-term tenure track academic work, which is my goal. So thank you so much for that opportunity. I'd also like to mention that for me, it feels especially important to receive this award. I'm a first-generation college student, so my parents didn't even finish high school. And there's been a lot of times along the way when it's just felt like the obstacles were tremendous, like people didn't understand where I was coming from, and that was both like people in my family didn't understand what I was trying to do, and also people within the academy didn't understand what it's like to have a family where no one can even begin to understand the kinds of work that I'm doing. So to be recognized with an award like this is to feel like I've officially been accepted into this community, and that means a lot to me. So thank you again for that opportunity. As Margaret mentioned, my research looks at land use. I started as an archaeologist, and I did master's research looking at ancient land use decision-making practices. And while that work was fascinating, I got to play Indiana Jones for a little bit of time. My nephews were very jealous. It made me realize just how political of a question this is. And so I shifted my research for my dissertation, and I now look at contemporary issues, specifically in the South Chicago region, where there was once massive industry, particularly steelmaking. It's fallen into decline, and now there's a question of what to do with the spaces that used to be big industrial factories and warehouses. There's a big push to transform those to be green spaces, an opportunity for a kind of environmental revitalization. And my thesis, my dissertation, argues that what's going on there is actually also a re-articulation of economic goals and a different vision for what the future of the country could look like economically. When people talk about environmental revitalization, they're talking about best practices for all and a kind of sense of communal well-being that we can't really talk about in economic policy as freely as we can in other spaces. So I argue that there's kind of a conflation and a doublespeak going on there that's actually very intentional. And it's possibly a place to open up different kinds of visions for future alternatives to capitalism. So that's the dissertation. I'm, again, so grateful for the opportunity to be able to further my work on it with this fellowship. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
She's studying at UC Irvine in history, and she's had quite a life, and I'm going to call her an out-and-out feminist. And that's a big compliment, because she has started more groups for her age than I have ever heard. I wish I could go back to being her age again and do what she's doing. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much for that incredibly generous introduction. And thank you so much for having me and for allowing me to be a part of this incredible community. There's so much that I want to say. I will first say, just in case there's anyone else in the room, I'm a proud graduate of the Seven Sisters. I went to Bryn Mawr, so if there's any of you out there, hey. So I come to this project to educating women as a result of being part of that system, of getting to go to college in a place where patriarchy wasn't the central organizing principle, and getting to see what that world really looks like. And it was an incredible world. And it was incredible to see what people could do, what people could achieve. And so I decided to pursue that further and to see if I couldn't create that environment other places in the country. And I decided to do that through history, as Judy mentioned. I'm a historian of 20th century United States. My subfield is gender and sexuality studies, but I also work in medicine. Specifically, I'm a historian of patient advocacy around HIV/AIDS. So what I look at is the people who, sort of the unsung heroes of stigmatized diseases. I have an article forthcoming with the Journal of Women's Studies that looks actually at women who were interned in what was a leper colony here in Louisiana. and the work they did, the way that they used their femininity specifically and marshaled the rhetoric around what it is to be a woman to advocate for ending quarantine for people with Hansen's disease. So this intersection between disease and gender is something that's really important to me. My dissertation has become sort of a strange love of my life in that I stumbled upon 15 boxes of materials at an archive in San Francisco and got access to the story of the 12 nurses who started the first AIDS ward in the country at San Francisco General Hospital. And after seeing 15 boxes of their stories, I felt like I had a moral obligation to change what I was doing and tell that story. So I'm talking about advocacy that gets ignored because it's gendered, right? When we think of nursing, we tend to think of women, and we certainly don't tend to think of that as political. But of course, care is one of the most political things you can do. And so I'm really invested in pointing out the ways that women in caring, right, in very much the same way you all are caring for me, are making a political investment. What does this award do for me? It does a tremendous amount. It means that I won't be teaching this year, which, although I love teaching, would have been a very serious drain and probably would have meant I wouldn't have been able to finish my dissertation this year. So I'm not teaching this year. I'm currently finishing my dissertation. I'm on the job market applying to jobs. I'm very excited about that, and this is a good year. Apparently everyone wants historians of LGBT health, so I don't know how that happened, but the timing was right. So hopefully I'll have a job when this is all over. But I also get to focus more attention on my advocacy work, and I do have a lot of groups. There are a lot of groups. I started a group on my campus this year called the Feminist Illuminati, and we are out there spreading an agenda of world domination. We're trying to make campuses safer spaces for women, and specifically for women who identify as feminists. With the rise of the men's rights movement, which is inherently contradictory, and some of the hate speech. We've seen a lot of hate speech on my campus, and so we've been trying to respond to that in a strong way and say that feminism is now going to be the central organizing principle of higher education. So I'm doing that. I work on the Coordinating Council of Women in History, the Western Association of Women Historians, and I am trying to mentor women, young women, undergraduate women, who are learning what feminism is for the first time. And I couldn't be doing that without y'all's support. I genuinely, I can't say enough how much I appreciate it. The other thing that I wanted to tell you, because I don't know that you even necessarily knew this when you gave me the opportunity to do this work, is that I'm also living with a disability. Part of the reason that I am a patient advocate is because I've been a patient and I know how hard it is to advocate for yourself sometimes. And in academia, people with disabilities are discriminated against time and time again. Add to that being a woman, and it's a whole different story. And I've been very lucky. I've been able to do quite well in the academy despite the limitations that I have. And I think it's really important that people like me who have been able to get through that bottleneck become teachers and mirror that for a new generation of women, especially a new generation of women with a disability. So thank you for letting me be a part of that movement. I really genuinely appreciate it. Like I said, I come from a community of women, so I appreciate you perhaps more than you even know. And I'm really excited to see what happens in the coming year, and it will all be thanks to you. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Hernandez-Torres, and I am the co-president of the Glendale branch. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Georgia Bino Papadakis. She is a Greek American. She's been in the United States for 4 years. She grew up in Crete, and she is such a fascinating young woman to talk to. She, besides being super bright, she's also a music teacher, and she plays the piano, and she's an expert in theory and harmony of music. But in her real everyday life, she is working toward her PhD in physics at the Caltech Institute in Pasadena. She is researching artificial nanostructures with properties that do not exist in natural materials. She is investigating mathematical models and experimental methods for understanding how light interacts with this new type of artificial matter. And I asked her to please explain to us lay people what that means.
I'm Georgia, and I studied in Greece for my undergrad in electrical engineering, and then I went to CERN, and at CERN I worked as an engineer, and I realized I really want to do physics. So then I said, okay, I'll apply to Caltech, and it's crazy, but I got admitted. So then I came to Caltech, and I studied something called metamaterials. So what metamaterials are, it's a notion that was introduced by Richard Feynman actually at Caltech in 1959, if not by someone even before that. So it's the idea that if we put tiny things together, we see that light interacts with this new type of matter in a completely different way than it interacts with natural materials. And this is important because this is a way to expand the properties of natural materials that exist in nature. For example, solar panels, they don't absorb as much light as we would want them to. Research in metamaterials helps with that. And also, it's a fundamentally important issue because we want to understand more how we can make better materials. So my first few years in my PhD, I focused on mathematical modeling to describe this type of really complicated structures. And then I realized that, unfortunately, people in the field are either theorists or experimentalists, but the two different branches don't really talk to each other as much as would help the field. So I started doing experiments as well, and with a combination of theory and experiments, I saw something that was kind of interesting. So I saw that materials in this tiny dimensions actually interact with magnetic fields, and this is something that doesn't happen in natural materials. So natural materials mostly interact with the electric field of light, and there have been many old theories about how it's completely impossible to make magnetism a thing in optical frequencies, and the frequencies that we really care about in technological applications, like storing data, for example. So I've been working on that for a while, and I was actually just at a conference, an international conference in Greece, where I had to stand up in front of a whole community of, I'm in STEM, so it's mostly men, which is completely fine and it's wonderful, to be a young woman giving a talk there. And I had to really argue that this might not be the case, and maybe there are cases where actually we can see artificial magnetism in these materials. And that's a very detailed issue, but what I'm trying to say is that this fellowship, along with other opportunities here, have given me the confidence to stand in front of people and explain things that might be in big contrast with with other ways that people used to think. So I came in the States 4 years ago, and I thought this was a crazy thing to go from Greece to the States, and I was given this fellowship, and which was great for me to argue my ideas, allowed me not to teach this year, write a thesis, and allowed me to propose new ideas in my research group that are actually being implemented now. So thank you very much for giving me this fellowship.
Jacqueline graduated with an AA in Southwestern College. That's way down in San Diego where I live. And she then went to San Diego State University and received a BA degree. And now in May, you'll be getting your master's from Cal State Fullerton in instructional design and technology. Somebody influenced her. A CFO, a woman, CFO said to her one day, "Would you like to go to a conference?" She debated, and then she said, "Oh yes, I'll go." Well, it changed her life. And now in Los Angeles, there may be a conference, and she may be giving a presentation this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline, and first I would like to thank AAUW, my sponsors, for this tremendous opportunity. I am currently a technology specialist and database administrator for a TK through 12 independent day school. I've only been exposed to the technology field for about 2 years now. Very fortunate that my CFO at that time exposed me to that, and somehow it has blossomed into a passion of mine. Through this grant, I am able, and I am currently pursuing a Master's of Science degree in Instructional Design and Technology, and I hope to use that to further my career. Like I said, I've only been in the technology department for about 2 years, and it is very apparent that there is a lack of female presence in technology, in science, engineering, math, and so I hope to be a role model for the girls in our school and just for anyone, and to receive a grant from such an amazing community such as this means the world to me. So thank you.
The fellow I will introduce now is a career development grant recipient working toward her Master's of Fine Arts in Theater at UCLA. Using acting as a catalyst and a platform, she seeks to bring forth the bold and multifaceted narratives of women of color. She is partially funded by interest from the Fullerton Branch Endowment. Please help me give a very warm welcome to Ashley Cleveland.
Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. Excuse me. Well, that's a way to break the ice. It is my esteemed honor and pleasure to be in your presence and personally thank you for investing in my career as I have made the leap of faith to invest in myself. I am a second-year graduate actor at UCLA, and I am pursuing an MFA in acting. Whew. These past 2 years have been a total game changer because prior to me coming to Los Angeles, I'm originally from Georgia, and I was sort of doubting whether or not to take that leap of faith. I've been in acting since I was 14 years old, doing theater and doing the speeches at church and things of that nature. And so I always knew I had the gift, but I was always afraid of the impact that I could bring. And so after college, I taught theater to young kids and youth, and that really struck a chord with me of like, wow, you're impacting lives. Why not pull the focus back on yourself? So that began my journey to coming out here. A former professor of mine just sent me an email one night about this opportunity, and she said, just apply for the scholarship and see what happens. And so I was like, okay, I'm really not sure, but I did it anyway, and everything fell into place. This grant will allow me to continue my studies in school. I'm very, very grateful, and I look forward to directing and also writing my own pieces in the arts, and I just graciously thank you all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Toby Balma, and I'm from the La Palma Cerritos Ranch. These events are wonderful. I mean, because we get to see where our money has gone and is going and the future. It's just, and this time it's even more magical for me personally to introduce this amazing young woman whose career development grant is funded in part by my very own branch, the La Palma Cerritos branch. So this is Sabina. I'm going to leave it to her to pronounce her last name. And she's a career development grant recipient, and she's working toward her MFA in cinematic arts at USC, a very, very difficult program to get into. Nope, it is USC. Okay? So you may change your program for USC. Okay? Now, she is a former Bosnian War refugee. And she's used her storytelling talents to educate, enrich, and entertain audiences around the globe. Starting with her critically acclaimed documentary, Back to Bosnia. I give you Sabina.
Thank you very much, Toby, for such a wonderful introduction. And thank you all for such an amazing fellowship. I am really deeply honored to become part of this family and really to follow in the footsteps of all these other fellows who spoke before me. I think my biggest insecurity is that, you know, in the face of such wonderful progress that is being made in fields that are actually changing people's lives, what am I doing? I'm just entertaining. So, you know, I really appreciate you putting your faith and your money in somebody who's just entertaining the masses. So yes, as Toby mentioned, I came to this country in the 90s as a war refugee from Bosnia during the war. My family sent me out pretty much on my own because there were rape camps that were popping up around my hometown, and my father was very active in trying to fight the oppressive forces, and so my family was targeted. And my parents sent me out. I was 14. I didn't really know what was happening, and I was on my own. And about 2 years later, my mom came out. I was living in Croatia as a refugee, and she and me and my little brother came to the United States during the previous Clinton administration, and hopefully, yes, and we were very, very grateful for that. And I wanted to be a film director since I was 8 years old. My dad's a cinephile. I spent all my free time watching movies with him, and I didn't really have a question that I could be a film director, largely because my parents, both my mom and my dad, are feminists. My dad will be the first one to say it. They raised me to believe that I could be whoever I want to be and that nothing can stand in my way, which was very unusual given the culture that I come from, which is very patriarchal. And my father would often get in trouble with his family for being such a supporter of women because we are not supposed to be in those positions of power. We're supposed to get married by the time we're 25 and have kids and support our husbands. And if we have jobs, it's fine as long as they're supporting our husbands and our family, and we still make it home to make dinner and, you know, don't have any ambitions beyond that. And so for me to have an ambition to win an Oscar one day was really unusual, and I'm really grateful that I've been supported by my parents and my friends along the way. That didn't make it any easier coming into this field, which pretty much reflects the feelings of my grandparents. And I've been fighting very hard as kind of a way as I can to change that narrative. And deciding to come back to school after about 10 years in the professional world was a really tough decision for me. I was making movies already. I was having a really wonderful community in New York City where I came, after we came to the United States, I moved there. And, but I decided that if I really was going to win that Oscar, I need to go on the inside. I need to go and play in the big leagues. And, you know, USC is, and it is USC, not UCLA, is known as the school that really opens those doors if you're willing to put in the effort. And God knows I'm willing to put in the effort. And so I'm in there, I'm fighting my way through. I really am very passionate about telling stories with strong female protagonists, doing stuff that women are not usually supposed to do in stories that we tell. So my goal is to make a female Bond, to make a female Indiana Jones, and to really give little girls who are going to be watching those movies somebody they can aspire to become. Because I loved those movies when I was growing up, but I always identified with the men in them. It was the women who were just standing aside, waiting for them to come home, the same way that, you know, everybody else in my family was doing, other than my mom. And so I think that is the power that we as artists have. Like, we're not saving lives in hospitals, but I think we're saving minds. You know, we have a power to change the way that we as a society perceive the world. And I consider that a huge responsibility, and I'm so grateful to you for giving me financing to pursue that, because going back to school after all those years and really just like supporting it by myself, it has been very hard. So to know that you are behind me has made all the difference. Thank you very much.
We are delighted that this community action grant actually came from the interest of Long Beach and 6 other endowments, but all in Northern California. And part of the excitement too is we didn't have any of our money from our Long Beach branch going to a California organization last year. So this is very doubly exciting. And I'm co-chair of our STEM conference. So it's great pleasure for me to introduce Zhomi Liu, who happens to be the program coordinator for the YWCA of Pasadena Foothill Valley. And the Community Action Grant is going to support Tech Girls. And I'm going to let Zhomi explain to you. She's been sitting here kind of like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to speak as these other women? And we've told her, no, tell us about the program, because she's been working on this now for almost 2 years.
Okay, well, thank you. Again, my name is Zhomi, and I'm the program coordinator at the YWCA Pasadena. We're a small nonprofit, although very impactful, and we strive every day to empower women and girls in our community, especially in Northwest Pasadena, and also adults and seniors as well. So really quickly, I want to thank the AAUW for having awarded the YWCA of Pasadena Foothill Valley this amazing community action grant. This grant will go directly toward our after-school program, Tech Girls, which is designed to expose middle school girls to programming and engineering. So what we do is we serve Northwest Pasadena, which Pasadena being a city of incredible income inequality. We have girls in the Northwest Pasadena region who have families and roots in the community that have been there for generations, that are whose majority single parent households are fighting to stay and live and thrive within the community. And so the girls that we have in our programs, we ensure that they are girls that are given the opportunity to explore these programs and subjects which they may not already be on the track to pursue within PUSD. Upon entering middle school, many of them are already on track and oftentimes have difficulty enrolling in certain electives that are majority male dominated, even in middle school. For example, in Elliott Middle School, we have 2 girls who are the only girls in their class at Elliott in their robotics program. And what they found was that whenever they worked on group projects together, they often found that their voices were pushed aside. in the class. They often found that their solutions to problems were, always kind of talked over, by their classmates. And these are girls, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are already feeling that. So aside from, of course, the obvious programming skills and projects that we do, every lesson that we have for them is really a lesson in resiliency and a lesson in being able to express themselves in something that they feel they are pushed aside in often. So that summarizes our Tech Girls program. We also have other programs for girls and women in the community as well, including wraparound services that are practical for single-parent households in the Northwest Pasadena region. So I want to thank the AAUW, and we will continue our work in empowering the girls in our community. So thank you.
This is such a wonderful event, and I know you're going to go home and be inspired by our next generation. I do have one small bit of business that I have to address. As the state president, I preside over the board of directors, and we are currently looking for more directors for next year. And I would encourage all of you to consider serving on the state board. It is such a wonderful learning experience, leadership experience. How many of you have heard of the AAUW California Special Projects Fund? Yes. Well, they too are looking for new directors. And I would encourage you to consider applying also for that position. You may do so online, very simple. The forms are, you can fill them out online and send them in. Don't wait until the last day, which is December 8th. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, Sharon's been telling you that you can give her checks today and cash and all those things, and I'm here to tell you that you can do that today. That would be very nice, but did you know you could do it later on when you're not even here? How many know what the Legacy Circle is in this room? How many are members? Not enough, come on. Okay. Anyway, I'm just here to explain to those of you who didn't raise your hands the first time. Legacy Circle is our wonderful group of women who have decided to leave something to AAUW in their will. And I know you get requests from your colleges and your local drugstore, and everybody wants your money after you're gone. But if you're the person sitting in this room today, you are a devoted member. And I've known many of you in this room for 30 years, so I know how devoted you are. And as Sharon was saying, we did $1 million, that's wonderful. But you know that to continue this kind of program, it goes on after we're gone, at least we hope that it does. And so to do that, it's very easy to fill out a form. I think those of us who are in the Legacy Circle will tell you it's one of the less intrusive forms of asking for money, that you do not have to tell the amount. You can do it from stock, you can do it from the residual of your will, anything you want to do. They're willing to work with you in the development office in Washington. So please think about that. A portion, something, what's been important in your life all these years. And one of the things you do get, and I'm going to ask Sharon to model because my Legacy Circle pin broke this morning. That's how often I wear it, it's old. Anyway, this beautiful piece of jewelry comes with it. And just to let you know, people always say, I wear it to non-AAUW events, and they always compliment me on what a beautiful thing it is. So we have in California 2 people, because we're so large, and I'm the Southern California chair for Legacy Circle. We have 9 women across the country, and we do meet, and anytime we have a convention, we have monthly conference calls, we email a lot together, and we're in a lot of competition. And California's always first. Yeah, we are. Well, guess what? Washington State now has more Legacy Circle members than we do. So, I'm here to challenge you by convention in June in Washington. we better have some more legacy circle members. The committee set a goal for 50, and I think we've gotten about 12 so far since July. So we're moving along. But Washington State, come on. So please, if you've never considered this, consider it. You can give me a call or email me. I'm in the directory, and I'll be glad to steer you to the very simple form that you fill out. And just think of it as your legacy to the next generation of young women. So thank you.